3, 2, 1. I actually had a countdown before. Hello out there in the Betaverse. This is Beta Codex Live. Surprise if you are here. Hopefully you know where you are. And good now to you. Again, Beta Codex Live. I'm Ryan Erickson. I am here as usual with my friend Niels Pflaeging. Hello, Niels.
Hello, Ryan. Good to be in a new episode with you. Episode 51.
51. Amazing. Yeah, 17 times 3, our third 17th episode. So we've had 17 episodes 3 times. And this topic today on org physics, you mentioned in our conversation over the weekend, we did this again. And I said, well, yeah, we did do this. We did this back in June of 2023, 18 months ago or 15 months ago. So for those who might have been watching us back then, I'm sure we'll do different stuff today. But yes, it's the second time. There's so much more in this topic to get through in an hour, 3 hours, whatever. So I don't think it's an imposition upon our viewers to go into this topic.
Yes.
At the risk of just jumping in here on my own with my recent thinking, what drew you to bring org physics back into our conversation here?
Well, first of all, I thought we had never covered it.
Surprise!
And then on the weekend, I saw that we covered it in episode 6, as you just mentioned, right? Yeah. But then again, it doesn't matter because the concept of org physics is grossly underappreciated, grossly, and it's not so well understood, not so. It's still very new, and I think we might have an insight or two since June last year as well, since our episode number 6 on the topic, right? At least I work all the time on org physics related stuff, on cell structure design and transformation. It's also intimately related to org physics.
Yeah, again, it's part of the core beliefs about beta. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago about the theory Y belief and the 3 structures and how they support that belief about power width. And again, the term org physics may be elite for some, and that again is part of the education. What are if you think of physics in general of the natural world and what we talk about, what are the rules of physics? There are some rules to that environment that are universal. It's first principles, whatever, that we observe those rules. And if a person in authority is viewing their organization from this perspective of, I want to really look at what's happening here. And then if you say, well, if you think of these 3 structures and the 3 leaderships, what do you see now that you didn't see before? So
yeah, I think theory, concepts, theory, scientific insight, it reveals itself over time. Sometimes, often, the impact is only you can only see it and grasp it completely with hindsight. So when Silke Hermann and I produced the concept 13 years ago in 2011, of course, it sounded a little bit. It sounded much more daring to me that we called it org physics. It seemed very daring to me, right, to call it org physics.
Why was it?
Yeah.
So what was daring about it? Is it that that we're claiming laws? Why did she think it was daring? If you can...
Yes, to claim that this is about quasi-physical laws, quasi-physical, of course, right? To attach vocabulary that is entirely, from the exact sciences, to attach that to social sciences, the social structures, seemed very daring. And of course, today I have one of my sons
he's a physicist, right?
He's a physicist. So, of course, I always look at what he says about physics and what's happening in physics. Of course, I have read a couple of books about physics myself as well in the meantime. Nothing very very challenging or super scientific, but of course I look into what's happening. Yes, the the whole notion to speak of organizational structures in terms of quasi-physical laws, inevitable, let's say, forces governing organizations, that seemed quite daring to us at the time. We went through a couple of weeks of reflection and discussion here, Sergey and myself, to develop the concept, and we asked ourselves, is this the proper vocabulary? Can we really say that, that all organizations have the three structures, that certain forces apply in all organizations?
It's an assertion. It's an assertion, that your observation, you make an assertion about the world as it is, to say, yeah, we observe these phenomena. Well, you can verify them or not. So
yes, no, well, you cannot prove them, but you could disqualify them. That's the nature of the exact sciences. So nobody can prove that they're right, but only one example of proof that these three structures would not exist or temporarily would disprove the whole concept, and that hasn't happened. So 30 years on,
well,
nobody has disqualified the concepts, the statements, the assertions, as you call them, that were made.
And again, Robert comes in and says this is kind of in the same theme, that you can ignore the laws of org physics, but the laws of org physics do not ignore you. So maybe that's it. Does that phrase, it kind of rhymes with what you said?
Yes, well, we always said ignore org physics at your own peril. That's pretty much the same message, right? Ignore org physics ignore that there are three structures: formal structure, informal structure, value creation structure. Ignore that there are three powers and three kinds of leaderships. Ignore these insights at your own peril. I mean, you will pay your price, because these things are real. And this is something, of course, it's very important. You kind of already stated that. The discovery of org physics doesn't change the world. These structures have always existed in organizations. These social structures in organizations have existed always, but it makes a difference if you understand them and can use them to your own benefit. That's what the Robert Snyder quote also says, I think, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's similar to that. Is
you can ignore the laws of org physics, but the laws of org physics do not ignore you, or you cannot escape from the reality of org physics, right? That's the idea. And of course, the whole, I think we talked about this during our session in the last year, this whole all this talk of leaders.
15 months ago, we talked about it. So I don't remember exactly.
How would we know, right? No, I rewatched a little bit the episode.
You study being a brown noser. You don't blame that. So,
but all this talk about leaders and heroes at the top, and great leaders and charismatic leaders, all the leadership bollocks, it pales in the light of acknowledgement that there are those three structures, and ultimately what distinguishes a successful organization from a less successful one is value creation structure, which does not require heroic leaders at the top. In fact, it doesn't have a top. It's about decentralization. Yeah, that's what we see in your background, even behind you at the wall, the cell structure design. That's a value creation structure that's visible there. Yeah. That's thing with center and periphery. The periphery is in charge, and you do not need heroic leaders at the top, because that PG structure doesn't have a top and not a bottom. Doesn't have heads and asses.
Heads in asses, and I had that. So
heads and asses sounds like a band name, a name for a band. Guns N' Roses, heads and asses.
Have you seen the videos of what Guns N' Roses sound like today in concert, and the actual if they isolate the vocals, and it's terrifying. It's terrifying what actual Rose sounds like these days. So the subtitle of this episode, again, I was trying to keep it simple, because I tend to get wordy sometimes. So as we go forward, trying to be more simplistic about it. So the structures, powers, and leaderships. And this is what came on the front of white paper 18, structures, powers, and leaderships. We're talking about the structures, the three structures being the compliance structure, the
Formal
influence, so formal structure, the influence structural, the social structure, and then the value creation structure. And again, I'm writing this down. There's hierarchy, network. So do some would think, again, the structures have articulations of those structures, that the compliance structure would be articulated as an authority pyramid, which is the typical formal structure that we think of today. Again, we don't have to agree. Challenges as you wish, as you always do. And the network, the social structure being a network, in an informal network of social relationships that people have influence in others. So the influencers in that.
Yes.
And then the value creation structure, which is one of those structures that people talk about, value streams and this kind of thing, that we have value streams in a pyramid going out there, but in a beta organization, the value creation structure is much richer because you have network nodes that feed different pieces into the structure. And again, this is the whole thing that really frustrates me, is that so we have an hour to talk about it. You could talk for 2 hours about the value creation structure and what the dynamics are and how the principles relate to the value structure. I think you can, but again, so hierarchy, pyramid, network.
Yeah. I think that's you did a great sum up of the concept of org physics. So it's three structures: pyramid, network, as you called them. Formal structure, informal structure, value creation structure, governed by totally different logics because they are different. No? One is about compliance, the other one is about social interaction, and the third one is about the work. Yeah, what you just said made me think of. I mean, I went to so many conferences as a speaker mostly, right? And often I have to sit through other people's keynotes and talks and sessions. Right? Of course I have to.
Punishment.
Sometimes I want to kill myself while listening, of course. And you just reminded me, I should that you said something like I could talk about 2 hours about value creation structure. Of course, we don't want to do that kind of stuff here, right? This is not a keynote for it. But I remembered, you reminded me of several talks I had to sit through that were about process management, which is as dumb as project management or product management. But process management is a really dumb thing because it's always, it wants to, and of course, process management in agile or whatever, it's always something horrifically oversimplified. We don't have to agree, by the way. I'm just, we haven't scripted this, so we might disagree.
No.
But do you know these talks about process management? Processes?
Well, the process piece for me, thinking lean and Six Sigma and process efficiency is what I think about when I think about that. Is that how do I, as the leader of this pyramid, how do I force compliance with a process standard, or so that must comply.
And then you
with
have
this
process managers supposedly who drive the processes or standardize or whatever they do. Supposedly, yes.
And again, to be explicit, like procedures, like processes turn into procedures, which turn into practices that support. So you can talk yourself into what those things are, as opposed to viewing from if you view from a value creation perspective. Yes. Right. So some of those things there are standards that guide principles for each, the context in the nodes. That's how I think of it. But process management, procedures and practices.
Sure. And usually all that comes from parts from the assumption that you have departments or areas which the processes will cross, and you will have handovers between the silos, and that you will steer the processes. All those are implicit assumptions behind notions of process management. And of course, there are also this notion that everything can be a process, which is untrue, because in complexity, processes become misleading. Processes are great for what's complicated, for the complicated parts of value creation. For the complex parts, you need ideas,
agreements, agreements,
and
principles.
that kind of stuff. Yes. So processes end in complexity, so to speak. Processes can only handle the methodology of process management is fair and well in principle for the complicated, but then the question is, do you really need it? Shouldn't you dissolve the departments? Shouldn't you dissolve the areas or the silos and integrate the processes into self-steering teams? And that is what I wanted to explain. If you create a cell structure design like the one image hanging behind your head, yes. Once you have this kind of distinction between center and periphery, and you have highly autonomous cells in the periphery, what I like to say is that most business processes and value creation processes, they kind of vanish in the cells, in the periphery cells mainly. Yeah, because these periphery cells start to run their own business like a startups, and in a startup,
yeah. So they're like, I guess some would call it black box. That these are essentially black boxes that work within themselves.
Doesn't sound so good, right?
No. But
it's
again,
okay.
People talk about that in that context, that there's the seam agreements between the cells.
Yes.
But I don't have to know if I'm agreeing with you. I don't have to know how you manage your standards and processes.
Yes.
But I have to know how to coordinate with you so that we can create a flow of value through whichever path that needs to happen.
Yes.
So
you do not coordinate the periphery, but you have to coordinate with the periphery if you want to do something for them, that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. And the periphery cells or cells in the cell structure coordinate among themselves. They are not coordinated from the top down. They are not steered or commanded from the outside. So that's where the black box thing comes in, I think, right? They are supposed to do their work as they see fit, take responsibility for it, of course. And that means most of the process management flies out of the window. It's a futile bullshit, really.
Well, the process management, and I want to get to Robert's comment here as well, but the process management to me,
wait a second, is Robert live? Is he attending this? Is that it?
He's on YouTube commenting.
Oh, that's great. Hello, Robert. We do not know each other yet, but that's nice. Thank you for commenting, by the way. I wasn't aware. When you posted the first thing, I wasn't aware that he was attending.
Yeah, all the comments here, the ones on YouTube, I could actually respond to Robert here as we want, but that takes me actually typing, trying to listen to you at the same time, which is difficult for me, but could do it.
And here there might be an interesting misunderstanding, right? Interesting to think of a word that is limited to strictly improvisation. You want to make a comment on that?
Yeah, because as I understand the cell structure, we're not talking about chaos. We're not talking about no process at all. What we're talking about, again, there's standards within a socially dense network. So I'm with you. This is the process that we have within this cell, our sphere of a cell, to create, so that we can create value that serves the market as well as serving the other. And again,
to avoid a misunderstanding.
It's avoid misunderstanding. So this standards that agreements on standards with power with. And also, if we think about, this is me talking about jazz is not unstructured. There are there's free jazz, of course, those who know Ornette Coleman, that but there's even in free jazz
and worse.
And so Sun Ra, Ornette Coleman, Anthony. So they're all.
I once went to a concert by John Zorn. Do you know John Zorn?
Yes.
It was fucking unbearable. We had to leave. It was too much.
What that's the thing, but then this is if I've already experienced the Tim Banali American Songbook, maybe Jazz Fusion, maybe like Chick Corea, then okay, so I'm bored with that. Okay, but now there's this other weirdo who's doing this other thing, but there's a structure, there's a design to that stuff. We don't have to agree, but that this is so. Maybe I dig that.
Yes,
but if we think about like Chick Corea, Miles Davis and the quintets, that there's a song structure, there's a melodic start, there's a form, there's all these things,
and in between, right?
And then they improvise on top of that the power goes from each person to have that, and then you end the song, right? So I'm playing my jazz bit here.
Just to comment specifically on what Robert said, thank you for commenting, Robert, by the way. This is not to counter argue, but to add something that might be misunderstandable. When we talk of a cell structure, we do not mean strictly improvisation. A great example to illustrate this is Toyota. At Toyota, the team set their own standards, which is good because when you put together a car, it's good to have certain standards, but the standards are not defined by a quality department or a process manager. They are set by the teams, and then they have a standard, and they can then work to set a higher standard, but they cannot never go lower, right? I think that's an interesting way of understanding standards, right? Because usually when we think standards from an alpha command and control perspective, we think of managers imposing standards, quality people imposing standards, auditors imposing standards, and that's not
enforcing compliance with standards.
Yeah. And of course, there might be, in several interested, there might be external compliance standards as well, right? In pharmaceuticals, for example, great example. And then, of course, but that also defines minimum standard, right? And the team can go beyond if they think that's recommendable, and effective or efficient. But that standards are, in principle, that standards are set by teams for themselves, and then the standards become a tool for an instrument of continuous improvement, of Kaizen at Toyota, right?
It's a working agreement, right? So we agree upon the
standard. But it's not all improv. We are free to experiment with drug during working hours. It's not like that, right?
And again, this also comes back to one of the core principles of lean, continuous improvement, respect for people. That if it all comes down to those two, then and then you get into the details of walking the Gemba and the what is it, Shinji Jitsu, or I don't know the specific Japanese terms.
Or Jiu-Jitsu. Is that something different? But it's a great example, this thing about standards. In a way, the idea of a cell structure design of a beta organization of decentralization is that also standards vanish in the periphery cells. Standards do not become, tools of process management, hierarchically top down or through silos or departments, but they become, standards are a way of organizations, of teams to self-organize, right, and to improve, of course. Yeah. So it's an interesting. Those are interesting topics, simply. Yeah. But this whole discussion of, I always suffer from seeing people still talk about process management like it's 1999. We always have to talk about songs, right?
So that would have to play. So I can't play 1999 on the bass by itself, but
I'm totally incapable of singing it correctly as well.
I've lost my sense of pitch. I used to have perfect pitch, but I haven't been singing as much over time, and then I don't have it anymore, which is it's frustrating for me. But so we've talked about structures, and I'd like to move into powers. And what I wrote about when I was thinking about this weekend in preparation for the episode, I had a couple pairs, a few couplets about power that I'd like to toss out there. One was the easy one, was power over versus power with, and we've talked about that a ton here. One is the power of imposition over invitation. That's I think just maybe that's power, maybe it's not. Competition versus collaboration. That's a different way to exert power. I know we've talked about this one before. There's probably disagreement there. I think there's a polarity between fear and love. That's how power is exerted. And one of my favorites, again, a term that I like to use that I don't know if I invented or not, but it's the othering versus togethering. This is kind of I am against you instead of I am with you, right? So that's a different thing. The other thing, again, the polarity, whether this is power or not, we can talk about it.
I think all these things allude to connectedness versus isolationism in organizations, which is rampant in alpha organizations, command and control organizations. This learned helplessness theme. Do you want to talk about these in detail? These different distinctions.
Well, the last one was contempt and curiosity. And I think
contempt and curiosity. Okay, where did you get this from? This pair of
that couple actually comes from a book by Caitlin Walker that was originated from a therapy mode by oh gosh, I can't remember the name offhand. Boy, I would get slapped by all the clean language folks, but the book is called Contempt to Curiosity, and it's about
Contempt to Curiosity.
From Contempt to Curiosity, and
that reminds me of a movie that I love, Donnie Darko. Have you seen that?
I haven't.
Donnie Darko.
You keep bringing up these film references that I don't have. But
sorry, I'm not to intimidate or embarrass you. No.
But I'm aware of it. How does Donnie Darko do the contempt versus curiosity?
Yes, because when you say from contempt to curiosity, that means that it implies, maybe it doesn't mean it, but I understand that they are on a scale, right?
A polarity, yeah.
Curiosity. And in Donnie Darko, in the movie Donnie Darko, which is the movie that made Jake Gyllenhaal?
Yeah. Famous. Yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal. Mm-hmm.
Jake Gyllenhaal. I once saw him in the theater in New York City. That was great. Mm-hmm. So Donnie Darko plays young Donnie Darko. Jake Gyllenhaal plays him, and there are several scenes at school, and there is one, let's say, awkward teaching scene in which the teacher, it's really about teaching dogma, and it's not good teaching that's happening. It's there's some kind of auditorium school propaganda going on in that school. And in one of those scenes, the teacher, terrible woman, great actress, but terrible, terrible.
The character is portrayed terribly.
Exactly, the character is portrayed in a ridiculous way. But she kind of claims that there is a scale on a scale that you should choose between one thing and the other, and Donnie Darko kind of intervenes and says, I do not think that one is really the opposite or another, that these really form a pair. It doesn't make any sense, right, if we look at it, and he gets immediately punished for this interference, for this critical. Yeah. So I love that scene because it's about critical thinking, right? Don't swallow every sloppy distinction that is being made, any sloppy scales that are being articulated. For example, love and fear, is it really the opposite? We should ask, right? We should wonder. Yeah. And wondering doesn't mean that it's wrong, but we should wonder. That's why double axis charts are so dangerous, because they imply so many things. Yeah. And once you swallow the assumptions hidden in the axes,
you don't look at the axes. You just make assumptions about this is the truth, and now I'm putting something in the truth.
And that's like hypnosis. It's manipulative, to use it. So when you say from contempt to creativity, I would ask the Donnie Darko question first. Is that really one the opposite of the other?
Well, and this maybe it comes into the third. If you think of again the axes, right? There's a third axis. So in context, no, there's not. This is just me riffing on it. But in context, when I am in let's say it's a coaching or therapeutic relationship with a client, that the intervention is okay. So you currently hold contempt for someone in this relationship that you have.
Contempt is this thing of looking down, judging someone, right?
I hate you. I am disgusted by you. Everything you do, I can't stand.
I think like that about 90% of people. I hold contempt for almost everybody. I wasn't sure. That's why I was asking. I mean, I'm a poor German, so this is my third, fourth language, English. So I just wanted to check. To contempt is like to despise. Something like that, right?
Yeah, to despise something, and curiosity is to say,
how is curiosity? Curiosity about the other.
Yeah, about the other. Instead of hating you for what you are, that I identify you as this contemptible thing. Let me step back and be curious
about. I should be curious about Donald Trump now.
Well, still? I would say. Well, again. That there's another axis about behavior. So how does this person behave? What are the impacts they have? But if I am in relationship with you, if I have a commitment to you, I have something at stake because we're in a relationship.
So we need something like an assholism axis as well. We need contempt, curiosity, and not asshole. So Trump high up there, and then we can despise him.
But so this is the perfect example, because there are many different things that
or Elon Musk.
we could talk about, or Elon Musk, or Jeff Bezos, or Bill Gates, or whomever, whatever great leader you're talking about. There's a darkness on the left. Okay, the great
leader. Yeah,
great leader. Yeah, but anyway, I think you're talking about it. There are multiple, so that feelings that one can. There's sometimes that what pair of those can you not hold at the same time? Is there a pair that can I be in contempt of you, while also being curious about what is the story that brought you to become this contemptible person? And if what's at stake is our marriage, for example, right?
Yeah.
Then that's a whole nother thing. So and there, in the Ralph Stacey book I'm reading, that I actually skipped to the end to, because whatever it was about the book.
Yeah, I understand.
One of the things that he argues is that caring about another is not this universal, that there is an idea that there's a polarity, but there's a caring and not caring that exists at the same time, as opposed to this universal caring, which, as in organizational behavior, which is what he's trying to describe in this book, that the shift from complex adaptive systems to complex responsive process, that the idea of how do I care? And universally I care about you. Well, not necessarily. That the process, and maybe we're talking about process, that maybe that's the bullshit thing that comes out, but in the spirit of polarity, that's not a polarity, that there's a coexistence of caring and not caring. But anyway, and all right, I was going to go into Agile. I'm going to put Agile on the back burner. I don't care to talk about that too much.
But let's connect this back to org physics. Wait. Do you want to continue?
Yeah. Well, the org physics connection was the powers. We were on powers. That power over versus power with, and if we talk about, that's the Pflaeging power. So you're saying there are three powers, right? So what are your distinctions between the three, and why do you make them? How do you define the powers?
Okay, we don't define them, right? Because the definition, what org physics clarifies is that there are those three structures that we discussed. Now, what's the consequence of having three structures? That bothered us. What's the consequence of saying there are three structures? What arises from these structures? Okay, they
relationships.
They have a purpose, so to speak, each of these structures. And these are different. For example, informal structure, or the social structure, the social fabric of an organization, it is the relationship structure, right? We cannot not like or dislike the other, right? We just discussed this relationship thing, right? From contempt to curiosity. We have relationships with each other. We cannot not communicate, and so on. So, and that's a fact. I mean, so the informal structure is a well understood thing, really, scientifically. Not so well in organizational development, but it's well understood overall.
In psychology, right?
In psychology and the social sciences as well. I mean, social psychology. Yes. So and then it dawned on us as well. There's power in that, right? And the power is, we could usually refer to it as influence, right? If you have this informal power that others, for example, Katy Perry, you admire her maybe for her musicianship, but also you just like her. She's a likable, whatever she is, likable character. So she's an influencer in her own right. Or let's take the global influencer Taylor Swift. She has influence that she can use as a political power as well if she chooses to, and I think she should. She has influence way beyond the craftsmanship, which may bestow reputation upon her in our minds. You know, as a musician, she might have our respect, but beyond that, she has influence because people like her on some level, right?
And people will change,
her,
and people.
Both of that is informal structure.
So the way I understand that is that people who respect her authority, respect my authority from South Park. If individuals respect the authority of that person, they can be influenced by them and modify their behavior because of that influence. And maybe that's this informal authority because I am in relationship with you. I dig your music, and because I dig your music, I think you're a good person, and because you're a good person, I'm going to do what you think I should do, or what you say is
there are
good
two
behavior.
powers at play when we talk of Taylor Swift, Dua Lipa, Katy Perry, or whomever. And those are, one is the admiration for the craftsmanship, the musicianship, the mastery, or the songwriting, whatever you like, choose. And then there's this other, do I like her? For example, I may respect the musicianship of the British singer-songwriter, who I do not like. I actively dislike her. Adele. I dislike her music. Is that okay if I say so? Adele.
Sure.
I don't have
this is one of those rare occasions where we must agree to disagree.
Okay, that's fair. I hate her music. I think her voice is terrible. I think her songwriting sucks by and large. Okay. I also do not like musically. I do not like Taylor Swift, but I like her stance on politics. So recently, my opinions about Taylor Swift changed, of course. However, I'm just mentioning this not for the sake of argument about the music, but to distinguish. When we think of a music or an artist, we might, like or dislike the character or person, like Michael Jackson, and we might like Trump. The craftsmanship. And those are different forces. Yeah. And in organizations, we have this. One is the mastery, that's value creation structure, and that bestows reputation upon the person with mastery. And the other is informal structure that bestows influence upon the person who is liked. Yeah. More or less, So those are two powers at play, and it's interesting that we are having this conversation because it's really worth distinguishing the two. Yeah, it's something that should be learned. Is this the likability factor? Every organization has these people who everybody likes. I recently, in my current transformation initiative, I sat next to a guy. He's the ultimate teddy bear type. Very likable. I'm, of course, much less likable. Right? But this guy, when he sits next to me, he won already. He just has to sit next to me. He's so likable. I don't think even how he makes it, right? Or you, Ryan, you're super likable as well, right? So that's a thing. And then there's the other thing that is, what we sloppily sometimes call competence, the recognition of competence, but it's really recognition of mastery or craftsmanship, as we might say in a beta organization.
I love that you
different power, right? My respect for you as a craftsman, as a guitarist, as a bassist, as a professional, as an engineer, software developer, as an inventor, as a creator.
I respect your mastery. I respect your competence. I respect the excellence of the craft you create, and I respect your reputation. I mean that there's this. You have a
reputation is what you assign to the person you admire in that sense, right?
Right. Because and this is also about
that's a power.
Expertise, right? It's one thing to say I am an expert in this.
No.
Right?
Reputation is a thing that's ascribed to people. You cannot say I'm
exactly.
I'm expert and people will believe.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that if I claim to be an expert, or God forbid, a leader, right, then that's kind of this. It's an imposition, right? Expert is a label that I would say that is not imposed, that is ascribed to you, is conferred upon you by someone else. That I respect you, your competence, you have reputation with me, excellence. That I consider you an expert in this domain. Right, you're the master of your domain.
They're much better words, I think.
Well, no, go ahead. I'll bite. What better?
How do you call the much bigger than expert and with mastery? How do you call that? Leonard Bernstein, how would you call him, for example?
Eminence. I think there's.
Oh, that is good. Eminence. I like that. Yes, yes. Or maestro.
Maestro.
Or there are other words for that,
Yeah, master. I think you are a master. You are a master.
She is an authority.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. I think there are other words that we might use. Yeah, so that's the maximum. Eminence.
Yeah.
I think eminence. You nailed it at first, right? And I think those things, and there you see that it's always ascribed. It doesn't matter how competent I think I am or how competent you think you are. It's what people ascribe to us, and of course we can do things that make people perceive our levels of mastery or our eminence. For example, when somebody calls himself or herself a thought leader on LinkedIn, I always have to laugh because that's it has become, in the last 10 years, that has become from a rare self-indication, self-description to commonplace bullshit,
Yeah, there's a good book that actually goes into this about the Harvard Business Review, that the whole bullshit piece of the Harvard Business Review does not that there are thought leaders, right, and that it's the thought leadership market, but really it's the thought follower, right? The book is called The Leadership Mind by Connell Fanning. I don't know how exactly to pronounce it, but it's called The Leadership Mind. But one of the concepts that he describes in there is about thought followership, which is, I need to have some kind of social proof that whatever it is, OKRs, or let's say that OKRs work because this thought leader has said OKRs work. And they proved it at Google, blah, 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 blah. So I'm going to be a thought follower.
Right? There is another great book on this, very critical, What Tech Calls Thinking.
Who's the author of that?
Adrian Daub. What Tech Calls Thinking. I think it could be some of the articles that he wrote were called What Silicon Valley Calls Thinking. And it's nothing. People rambling, of course, 99% of it, right? It's pot-informed bollocks. I love the word. I cannot not say the word.
Cocaine-informed bollocks.
Or oxy-informed.
Or oxy. So to bring back around, so three structures. I think in one of my wanderings through trying to create graphics about this, I put some matrices about that there's what is the source of power, right? The source of power in for the formal structure, the source of power is position. It's positional power. I think Paul talks about too. Position. So in the social network, the power is from influence or likability, personality, right?
Likability,
the power of personality.
Influence is the name that we use for the power. So likability is it,
likability. You like my
connectedness, social connectedness, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Agreeableness, as kind of in the psychological frame.
Yes,
this agreeableness. So the power source in the one structure is the likability in the middle, position in the other, and then the value. What is the source of power in a value creation structure? It is mastery.
Yes.
I would that we're talking about the third. We're talking about it before, but the third structure of value creation, that the source of power is mastery, and this comes down to principle 11 or principle 12 in BetaCodex about mastery-based decision, right? So that if I respect
the capability of solving problems, old and new.
Yeah, I respect your mastery in this domain. And now, one of the things that came from Organized for Complexity that we don't talk about a lot, and I think this gets lost when folks talk about, well, no one person is the master of everything, but we talk about consultative decision making.
Yes.
And so there's a master that this master may have an idea of the things that they don't know. If we in ourselves have said this person has the mastery in that, I want to know from your perspective, you consult with the other masters in this other domain where you don't have the expertise, you don't possess that, and then bring that back into the cell to whether it is improve the standard or whether it is to better understand the complexity or engage with that complexity in the market. So that idea. So how do we decide what is the decision or agreement? I mean, we talked about that there are no decisions and there's agreements, but who has the authority to craft that agreement, and on what basis do they have it? The mastery, and that mastery, again, the last part of that riff is it is not fixed on position. It is, I call that dynamic authorization. Based on mastery of a domain.
Oh, that's very good. Yeah. And that's,
So those are the powers. We talk about the powers so 45 minutes in, we've got through structures and powers, and then the leaderships, which is kind of the teaser of all of it. So the three leaderships, I need to take a drink of water. So what are the three leaders?
You let me add something to what you just said. I think what you just explained, and now I will refer to TV shows. Have you seen any TV shows in which, for example, one of the last TV shows about lawyers, the legal practice that I've seen was Suits. Suits.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen that?
Mm-hmm.
With
I'm
Meghan
familiar
Markle,
with it.
who is now the Queen of Scotland or whatever she is. Okay. So any or most legal TV shows or hospital TV shows, they are about this, right? That no single person can know everything, be the master of everything. Or sometimes you have the mastery, but you do not have the influence, the personal relationship with the client or with somebody in the court or whatever it is, or you need some formal authority. Suits is a lot about formal authority. And then you need the name partner, the partner whose name is in the company name.
The placard on the door, yeah.
Yeah, so you always have to, use the powers for the problem that you try to solve. In Suits, for example, you always need the constellation that you need to solve the problem, where you might rely on formal power, authority, hierarchy, positional power, where you might need informal authority. Very well, I think. When you think about that TV show, Suits, there is this reddish-haired, super very, let's say, beautiful and so assistant in the law firm. Mm-hmm. And she always steps in when it's about relationship as well. Of course, she has lots of she has no positional power, or almost no positional power. She has lots of influence because people respect her for integrity and so on. And she has some mastery, but she's always needed when certain things go wrong and things need to be accelerated through informal structures, through relationship. So all these forces need to be brought to play, different lawyers, different actors, for informal structure, and with mastery. And so, and the same goes for, of course, TV shows about hospitals and doctors, like Dr. House. Yeah, and many others, except the one that's just bogus. What's that called? With Zach Braff. Do you know the Zach Braff?
Scrubs.
Scrubs, which is less about the serious stuff. Still, I think informal structure plays a big role. These things, I think,
it's about the hijinks. So the one thing you didn't talk about, and I think that maybe it's assumed, because there's the formal authority of whether in the legal system, and then the informal authority relationship. Oh, so the positional power, the influence power, the social power, and then the value creation power. Well, what's the value? Well, the value is the case. Who has the ideas? Who are the people with ideas to engage with the situation, with the domain? And that's that. I would say that's the mastery. That's the complexity versus complicatedness.
Sure.
And that if I have mastery of a domain, that the ideas I have and maybe informed by theory I know, by intuition I have, and all that kind of stuff. So the mastery of case management, the mastery of being a surgeon, right? To be a brain surgeon, there's a whole bunch of gobbledygook that you have to go through to do that. But or the mastery of musicianship, right? This is the difference between a kindergarten playing a recorder and Michael Brecker. That's a whole different bit. And what's the solution for the piece of music?
And of course, the greatest musicians have the most practice as well, right?
Yeah, and the preparedness. Pardon?
They play a lot, not like us. We have our instruments here, but hardly ever play. So our mastery declines really. But musicians, great musicians. I recently saw Peter Bernstein. I've already seen him 3 or 4 times in concert. He always plays everywhere. He seems to be everywhere. Peter Bernstein.
I'm not familiar with him.
Very serious guitar player, electric guitar player, but jazz. He's like Joe Pass, a little bit like that. Amazing guitar.
Like Oscar Peterson, right? So you bring up Oscar Peterson's like. There's no one like Oscar Peterson. So now we're getting it.
Oscar Peterson live as well, by the way, in Sao Paulo. I once saw Oscar Peterson on stage.
Oh man. Now you're just driving the knife into my heart.
That was an amazing moment, really.
Oh wow! So there's the other bits of power. I had another thing on power in here.
But it's very important that there are 3 powers, right? While you are breathing and looking at things up, there are 3 kinds of power. And to talk of leaders reduces the stuff. When people talk of leaders, they never mean influence. They never mean reputational power. They never mean mastery. Ultimately, they mean boring, hierarchical, authoritarian, paternalistic power. And that's not the big thing. It's really... In school, we would say, sit down, you didn't understand the problem. If you talk of leaders, just shut the fuck up because you don't understand what you're talking about. It's aggrandizing bullshit, It's really authoritarianism, aggrandizing bullshit to talk of leaders.
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting you bring up the teacher aspect of it, this idea of teacherly authority, that I am following your authority because I want to know what you know.
And we might also like you, but even if we do not like you, we respect your reputation, your mastery, your skill, your competence, as we sometimes say. Exactly. A teacher is a great example of somebody who might hold all 3 powers to the highest level or not.
And they might have...
You have formal power, but that's not enough. It's a great example of showing that formal power is not enough with children.
And there's some people who are assigned to be teachers and have no personality, no influence, and have no mastery.
Exactly.
And they're assholes. So that's that. I'm going to enforce this so that you have to do this standard and this grade. So you pass my test because you must, in order to pass this class.
Differently, using formal power, positional power to let's say claim authority is already an admittance of your self-defeat. Of your failure to execute, to do the job, really. Of course, in a family, that's the same. When the father says, as long as you eat here and sleep here, you have to obey my commands. That's also the ultimate
obey,
or else. That's always
obey or else
defeat.
Right? And that's the thing. There's also part of the beauty of beta comes down to the idea of the all-around success, and the mono-maximization is the seeking of profit at all costs, no matter what, or else I will lose my position, my authority, I'll get cast out into the wilderness, as opposed to seeking the all-around success for an organization for it to thrive in complexity. That profitability is definitely a part. It must be a part for survival. But to seek that at all costs at the expense of respect for human dignity and respect for ecology and environmental health, or any other number of metrics or measures that the financial measure is one, but there are many other measures, and that I think is the whole idea of. And again, one of the principles that I love, not maybe that do I have the power? I must exercise my power, or else I'm going to be cast out and put into the trash heap of managers who've failed. So, One other piece of the power equation that came up to me when we were talking about, okay, there's mastery in complexity. We're talking about mastery, expertise, people with ideas, reputation. The one word that we don't talk about much, and is trust. And that you could argue that a person trusts another because of either the fact, either I have trust in authority, or I have trust because I like you, or I
Yes.
have trust in your level of competence.
Interesting
And
question.
so
Yes. Trust has to do with
yes,
all three powers, probably. Yeah, that would
yeah,
all these things would be worth a bit of bit more research, right? Put these things in context. Yeah, great point. Yeah,
yeah.
you can trust in positional power, you can trust in a person's influence, and you can trust in or the kindness of spirit or whatever it is, and you can trust in the person's mastery, ability to solve problems if they appear. Yeah.
And the loss of that trust, and again, it takes, and this in Dan Mezek's work in Inviting Leadership, he talks about this idea of trust being so slow to build, right? But one
Well, that's
breach of
not
that
Daniel
trust.
Mezek's. Many people have written about that.
Many people have written about it, but he writes about it specifically in Inviting Leadership, and that's I want to call out to Dan because I like Dan. Hi Dan.
But it's not his thing, right?
I don't think he.
Not sure if he
Yeah,
got it from Covey. Covey wrote
Speed of Trust. Stephen M. R. Covey wrote Speed of Trust, Character and Competence kind of thing.
But in German language, we have other thinkers that I think trust is probably one of the best described and researched. Not that we have consensus about it, of course.
Well,
but,
so I want to bring
the issue of good thinking about it. I think
I want to bring the issue of trust back into org physics for a second.
Yeah,
is that
great.
if I trust in, if you breach your positional authority, that if you betray the trust of the role you have in compliance with legal environmental contextual structure, you're in a load of shit. And A, you get put into jail, and B, the trust in your whole organization blows away, whatever. And then if you're an asshole, you lose that's a whole other kind. So there's a whole episode in Elon Musk. I'm sure.
Example. Yeah.
Just one, or Bezos, or God forbid Donald Trump.
I think there are different levels of assholism, definitely, right? I think you can criticize Mr. Bezos for many things, but it's not the same level of
no, it's different, but there's a level, but different people trust in different ways. And I think that if Bezos loses the trust of the workforce because he's a union breaker,
yes,
then that's a whole thing, that you've betrayed the trust of individual workers.
Yes.
And then the interesting thing is that if, how does trust relate to mastery, competence, character, excellence, eminence? Well, if you are a charlatan, right? If you talk the bullshit, and then your bullshit is exposed, then I lose the trust in your competence. You're incompetent. You're exercising your authority for nefarious purposes, whatever. So that's I think that's a concept of that would require more research. I'm just kind of making an assumption about that,
but sure, trust is related to the three structures and the three powers of org physics.
Yeah,
and it's not something you can manage, but it is surely something that plays a big role in social dynamics within organizations. Yeah. And of course, it comes into place very strongly when you talk about, when you form a cell structure, when you decentralize, when you do a beta transformation, and when, departments are killed off, departments and business areas and so on. The silo structure is broken down. It's deactivated, so to speak. And in lieu of that, you create a decentralized cell structure with cells in the periphery and cells in the center. And then everybody will wonder, okay, who will I be in a team with? Who will I belong to? Who will be my my crowd, my team in a
The
cell.
tribe, yeah.
And there, the question of, do I have to like them that much? That's very important. What kind of level of respect, reputation is necessary? Do we have to have the same level of hierarchy? Does it really matter for the work? The answer is not. It doesn't.
Well,
Doesn't really matter, right?
do you remember when we talked about this with Silka a couple episodes ago, that you had this really great example of an organization where there had 5 domain masters got into a cell together, and they maybe had never met, or they'd heard about one another, or maybe they couldn't stand one or the other, but they were in the cell of social density. We were in the social density episode. That because they have the social density, they maybe, again, I would appreciate that you telling me how true this is, but that level of social density created this tribal belonging, that we're bonded because we're here for the work. We're here to play. Maybe Charlie Parker didn't care for Dizzy Gillespie that much, but they were like, okay, we're here to play.
Exactly. We don't have to be BFFs. We just have to we have to perform. We have a job to do. We have to maybe save the company, or we have to help other teams to excel and so on, and to level up. So that's I think that can seriously bond people with mastery together as well. Yeah, the mission, so to say. Yeah. That's how military squads work. That's how bands in jazz work, or quartets, of course, in classical music, string quartets, or of course teams at Toyota, etc. You don't have to be best friends. You can have a drink with anybody you like, but after work, I mean. But the people you work with, of course, do you respect each other? Do people show integrity? That's very important in a beta organization. That's a thing that influences trust a lot, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I don't like the person. That person is very different, and I find it hard to deal with in the day-to-day business. But do we have the necessary level of respect for each other, value creation structure, in terms of reputation or mastery, so that we can get along well enough to do the job, and maybe do the job very well? I think the Charlie Parker Dizzy Gillespie example was wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, you do. Oh, thank you. Doing the job. This is it's so important. I don't have to like you, but this. I mean, this comes down to lean again, and that was brought from Toyota, and thank you, Mr. Deming. But this is respect for people. I respect you. I respect your dignity. I respect your mastery. Respect for people. I may not have to like you, but I respect you, and we are in this to play, to perform, right? To performance, and for the service of continuous improvement. I want to get better.
May add something from my current consulting job or gig, from my current beta transformation. I always sense that, organizations usually have people have mastery, to run the business well enough. Usually, what you really cannot run a beta organization on is a lack of integrity. I think many things boil down to integrity. Like, we can discuss trust forever, but ultimately the question is not if there is trust or not, but if what's enabling or damaging trust is this lack of integrity, for example. And what I always sense in my consulting work with clients is that if you lose respect for people because of a lack of integrity, I mean, there's so many movies and TV shows about that as well. From The Godfather to the one with Kevin Costner that I recently tried to watch, but it was unbearable. Yellowstone or so on. There's always this question: do people have integrity? They can be the worst enemies, but if you acknowledge that the other has some level of integrity, then you can get along. And that's an interesting thing. I think it's a very important thing. In Alpha, of course, you try to organize social distancing within the organization in silos and hierarchically in all kinds of directions. And so, noticing each other's integrity and appreciating it, it's not part of day-to-day business. In a beta organization where you have to communicate more directly within your cell and between cells, doing agreements, communicating on eye level and so on, the the necessary limit, usually the floor of it all, is, do you have integrity? And otherwise, it would be very difficult to run an organization that's beta, that's decentralized, high levels of self-organization. Yeah, because beyond I like you, I accept your mastery or appreciate your mastery, and I appreciate and respect your positional power, there's also a question: are you a fucking asshole? And do I want to work with you at all? You know, and that's beyond the social structure or influence or what we discussed. You know, that's why I would never have a Tesla.
and
not because of the workers who work at Tesla, but I wonder how you can work at Tesla. Dear workers at Tesla, how can you work there?
Well, the Twitter folks, I mean, that story about him firing 75% of them and then them still running, interesting one.
How can you work at SpaceX even? I wonder, how can you work?
How could you work at Bank of America? How could you work at Bank of America?
Exactly.
How could you work at Blackstone or whatever again, get me canceled, right?
And that cancel, of course, this phenomenon of canceling is related to that. I think does a person have the necessary integrity, or do I want to work for a scumbag, douchebag? I have such great words in America. Complete douche.
Structures, powers, leadership, org physics, looking at organizations, and
we do not want to cover it all, because we want to come back within 45 episodes or so. We want to come back to this topic again, right?
Yes.
So if this wasn't enough for you, watch episode number 6, which was entitled Leaderships and something about org physics. Okay, so you might watch that as well, or check out the Beta Codex Network white paper number
11 and 18.
11 and 18, which are 2 white papers we wrote about org physics. And I think they are great, both. Yeah.
We
last
have
words.
We have last words.
Oh, by the way, Robert, what happened with Robert? Did he just?
Robert has like a ton of comments, so please go to and this is the thing, go to YouTube still, and you can comment. I'm going to go into YouTube reply to some of those contents. YouTube is the best way to interact with us. It'll be here. If I am somehow paying attention to the comments, I can reply there. I think you may be able to reply too in the comments. YouTube is the best. LinkedIn sucks as far as trying to interact with people, but again, we broadcast there. Yeah. So again, always a pleasure.
Thank you, Robert, for joining.
Very fun. And Robert, he just spirited twins.
The next manifesto.
Maybe it's the Agile Manifesto, anticipating douchebag. What was this other?
Alpha favors agendas as at the expense of alignment. Alpha favors authority at the expense of accountability.
Ooh, that I think is another episode, because we could go a different place with it. Alignment. Maybe that, I think alignment is another episode, because
isn't it the other way around? Interesting. Interesting. That makes me think it's way too complicated to finish off our session. Wait, this is about alpha. 2 things about alpha. We have to get back to that. Can you copy that?
Oh yeah, it's in YouTube. I can't copy it from here for
favors authority at the expense of accountability. Yes. Oh, the latter is right. Definitely. Yes. The first, I'm struggling to understand it, but great. Thank you for the contribution, Robert.
Yeah. So there's a whole bunch. I'm going to go in and acknowledge a lot of those on YouTube. Hopefully in the next couple hours.
I will take a look at that.
We'll broadcast this. This will be it'll be available on YouTube, of course. I'll broadcast this, repeat it to the Beta Codex Network page on LinkedIn, so folks can go there and we'll see this. I think that's it.
This was fun, Ryan. Thank you for having this second conversation about org physics. And I'm looking forward to the 3rd and 4th and 5th.
Yeah, well, we'll have the series on it. So, all right, folks, thank you for the precious gift of your time and attention. Peace out. Peace.